right. Good evening. Good evening. Hope everybody can hear me tonight. I hope we're live already. Welcome, welcome. I'm gonna wait for a few people to come in and join us tonight here on Facebook Live. Come on in. Get ready. Got a hot topic tonight. Got some wonderful guests tonight, and just waiting on you. Yep, especially you. Waiting on you to come on in tonight so we can spend some time together and talk about some relevant issues. Come on in. Come on in. All right.
Sorry
Oh,
about that.
that's okay. We're ready. Yep. Just waiting for some people to come on in. Um, as they're coming in, want to say thank you to I'm going to say my guests, my two co-hosts tonight. You see their names there. Got Apostle Lynn Horton all the way in Maryland. She's in the house tonight. Yay!
Yay!
Then have none other than the original Eddie Sharp, who is LPC right here in Birmingham, Alabama. Good to have you tonight.
Thank
So,
you.
as we're waiting for some more people to come in, what I want to do is just give both of you an opportunity just to share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and some of the work that you do before we start tonight.
So Mr. Sharp, I'm going to concede and ask you to go first.
Yes, ma'am. So, my name is Eddie Sharp. As Ms. Watson said, I am a licensed professional counselor in Birmingham, Alabama. Most of my career, I've been working with children on Medicaid in the homes and in the school environment, and inadvertently working with a lot of parents because of that. And in talking with parents, with a lot of relationship issues and ways that those kind of parental relationships impact their children. After the pandemic, I shifted to working more with adults. I work with couples, well, predominantly black men right now. But that's mostly what I've been doing. But ultimately focus it on mental health and helping the community figure out the best ways to move forward.
Thank you so much. And I'll just go ahead and say that's one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on because I know you work with a lot of black men,
Hmm.
black boys, and black men,
Hmm.
And yeah, uh, I'll just say from where I sit, it's hard to get those into conversations, into
Hmm.
communication. So that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on and be with us tonight. So thank you so much.
No problem.
All right.
Okay, so I'm Apostle Lynette Lynn Horton, and I'm the senior pastor of the People's Hope Ministries here in the DMV in Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm also a U.S. Air Force veteran and spent 7 years active duty in the Air Force. And as a result to a military sexual trauma, I lost my career. My choice then was to um, take what I had learned and kind of reinvent it, if you will, and reinvent myself. And now I am the owner and operator, the CEO of Linehan Consulting. So I meet with people across the globe that have maybe suffered military sexual trauma. I'm also a graduate of the Interventions Institute for Spiritual Development, as well. I'm a teacher there and a graduate of Norfolk State University. So I'm excited about anything to do with realigning, restructuring the life after trauma.
Awesome. Well, I knew not only did you wear that hat you have on well, I knew you wore many hats. So, and just glad to have both of you on tonight. Um, Good to see the people that I see online tonight so far. Hopefully, some more will join us or catch the replay. And by all means, I would hope that you would like and share um, your this live with your friends, your coworkers, and some other people that you know. So let's get started. What we want to talk about tonight, we're going to be talking about uh, and I use strategic words. I mean, we're going to talk about tunneling through abuse and trauma. And now you're trying to have a healthy relationship. Wow. Yeah, tunneling through abuse and or trauma. And now you're trying to have a healthy relationship. That's a wow in itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a little kindergarten definition of abuse. I put that it's in a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain and or maintain power and control over another, whether it's a partner, whether it's a friend, husband, wife, child, parent, co-worker, etc. That's my remixed definition. Any relationship, okay? And trauma um, is a result of a person's emotional response to a distressing event that causes long-term physical and or mental damage. It can be a one-time single event or it can be a series of events. So that's what we want to start tonight. Um, Thank you for joining. I see my brother who just had a birthday. Happy birthday, belated, Reverend Lennon Autry. See, I think Rosia 3. See, Overseer Billy Hall. Hope you're feeling well, feeling better tonight, and others who are joining in. Welcome, welcome. Listen, we ain't talking about nobody. We're just talking about what we're talking about. And tonight we're going to be talking about tunneling through abuse and trauma. And now you trying to have a healthy relationship. Wow.
Wow.
All right. Come on, people. Put your questions and comments in, and we're going to talk about this. So when you hear that, Eddie, from where you sit, and again, working with young African American boys and African American men, when you hear that, tunneling through abuse and trauma, speak to that. And then we're going to get to some more questions, but you speak to that first.
Well, the word tunneling, when I think about the word tunneling, I think about like some kind of creature that burrows or something, a groundhog or anything. But you know that when you're in the middle of whatever that tunnel is, it's dark and it's only kind of like limited ways that you can get out of the situation. And so that is the reality of people who are in abusive relationships. That is the reality of people who are enshrouded in their own childhood trauma and experiences and don't know how to get out. And then when you have to get out, that tunneling to get out to the other side, there's still a lot of work that you have to do to get over to what that light at the end of the tunnel is.
Amen. Oh wow, I love it. And that's the thing too. That's another thing I love about Eddie. He's such a word person and he's such an in-depth, you know, uh uh definition of words and whatever. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. What do you hear in that statement, Apostle Lynn, when you hear tunneling through
Uh,
abuse and trauma?
well, when I totally agree. I think tunneling is going to get you buried. However, I also would incorporate the areas of being stuck, or the stuck points, or stuck conversations, or things that victims or people who are going through trauma tend to tell themselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why people don't come necessarily through, is because they'll get to a certain place, believe the hype. We say don't believe the hype, we believe the hype. We get stuck, We don't believe there's a way to get out. We believe the hype. We get hurt. We think that that is just now my lot in life. We believe the hype. And don't believe that there is a way to ever um, be able to release it or even um, tunnel out or spin out. And so I think it's very important to make sure that if there has been a trauma, and so many people, I don't know many people who have not had a trauma actually, but there is, and it's extremely important to determine the directions that you're in, to determine the direction that you are going to be able to come out. So I think that one of the greatest things to do is to tell the whole truth, the rot gut, naked, greasy, smack dab in the middle truth. And that's my opinion on how it worked for me. I could not pretend or tell portions of it and just kind of hope for a better day. Hoping for a better day did not work for me.
Thank you, thank you. Let's talk about this. As you two were sharing, I thought about what about back in the day, those of us that were brought up or raised in an environment where we were told or taught what goes on in the house stays in the house.
Hmm.
You don't tell nobody. And I will tell you, there's still some of that circulating today as well. So, how do, or is there a way for us to help people understand that um, getting that out, finding someone that you can talk to, you know? And most people will say, I don't trust anyone, anymore or whatever. So what goes on in the house stays in the house, or I don't trust anybody, so I don't have anybody that I can tell this about this abuse, you know, or about this trauma that's tormenting me or whatever. So when you um, have some come to you, Eddie, let's just go back to the youth or the teens. What's the youngest age young man that you have worked with or that you're working with that you
I,
believe have experienced some type of trauma or abuse?
I've worked from age 5 up to 18. That's the range that I work with. And by the time I work with them, they all been through some pretty severe abuse because most of my work have been done with DHR,
Okay,
Child Protective Services. And so that's not what I do now. So the referrals I get for young boys now is more, working well issues, so relationship issues, be it with romantic, be it with parents, be it with siblings, identity issues. That's what I'm working with the young boys right now.
got it, got it. Okay, thank you. For those of you that are just joining us, good to see you tonight. What we're talking about tonight, we are talking about tunneling through abuse and or trauma, and now you're trying to have a healthy relationship. Okay, um, let's shift just a little bit. How have the two of you, um, how do you see or how do you understand childhood trauma impacting adulthood? Let's talk about that.
Well,
Do
that's
you,
packed. That's loaded. That's
okay,
packed and loaded. And I'm glad you asked that question. I want to kind of piggyback on what you were saying just a moment ago about what happens in the house stays in the house. And it does. And so the dysfunction becomes functional dysfunction, normal dysfunction. And then when you get out of the house, and you deal with things that are not normal to you, I didn't know, Dr. Watson, that there were people who had not been beat up. I didn't know there were people who had not been offended. by someone touching them. I thought that that was normal. When I got out of the house is when I ran into a brand new perspective of, oh my goodness, how am I going to now deal with what's on the outside? So I also believe that when we tell people or tell children specifically, don't tell what goes on in this house stays in this house, it becomes a fabric of that person's DNA. It becomes a, this is just my opinion, it becomes even spiritually attached to where people or children, young people, adults, they become too afraid to tell, and in thinking that now something is wrong with me because this is something that's unusual. And as long as people have convinced themselves something is wrong with me, as opposed to something is wrong with whoever touched me or whatever happened, I think that we will always have a group of people who are um, unhealed, that are stuck, that are afraid, that, and so now whoever did it in the home and said, don't speak about it in the home. Now I want relationships outside of the home, and it's not normal to laugh out loud. It's not normal to experience whatever the feelings come. And so it's a conflict in the mind, in the body, and in the spirit. And I believe that until people can get to the place where they can expose those, those secret things, those secret lies will make people sick. I
Yeah.
always tell people that your secrets will make you sick.
Another important component to that this sentiment is that silence is a function of abuse. Like
Yes.
abusers depend on that silence.
Yes.
And but when you leave the home and you like Apostle Lynn said, it becomes a part of your DNA, then you have created a person that is susceptible to being found by an abuser now. So even if you're not an abuser, but your trauma makes you tell your kids, we don't talk about what goes on in this house after this house, you're sending somebody with a mind that's compromised enough to believe that they should keep those things silent. And that's why it becomes important. If you're trying to prepare your children for the world, it becomes important to give them the freedom to use that voice. Now, the struggle is it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. So parents, in order to grow a child that has a strong voice, you have to be okay with that voice being used at you at sometimes, except you are supposed to be helping them navigate how to use it healthily, how to discern who to use it aggressively or non-aggressively or intentional with. And sometimes that's gonna take you, there's people that got slapped in the mouth by saying why to a parent. That is what makes your child silent. And so a lot of parents struggle with that piece because you have to give up some power in order to exchange that voice with your child.
Yeah, I tell you, it's so much. But we talk about how childhood trauma impacts adulthood. Let me tell y'all what I know, and I know you all can attest to this. It affects it greatly. There are many adults who are trying to have. I'm going to just start with maybe a courtship. People don't even know what a real courtship is now, in my opinion. But they're trying to have a courtship, and of course, they come from two different backgrounds, just say one comes out of this abuse and trauma, what have you. That's all they know. That's their world. And the other person comes from a different background. So, I mean, that's a clash right there, And so many times the person who has been traumatized or abused or what have you, depending on if they've had someone to talk to about that, or if they've had some counseling or some therapy or not, they're still dealing with that, or they haven't dealt with that. So when that person does something or say something, it triggers them back to that event.
Absolutely.
And so I deal with a good bit of that. And we're adults here, even in the sexual arena. I'm just going to say that. And so now you're going forward. I think I saw a question here. Someone said, how do you combat this when it comes to education or relationships with another. And that's why I wanted to speak to that. I just want to say this, it's really tough to try to have a healthy relationship uh, when you're still trying to tunnel through, okay, trauma and abuse. It's really tough, because there are always little triggers, okay, and things that you think about. So I hope that answers your question, Reverend Autry. And I'm going to say, by all means, try to get to a therapist, someone who can help you through that. Um, yes, pastoral care is good. I ain't talking about nobody, just talking about what I'm talking about. Sometimes you need uh, someone in addition to pastoral care to help you with certain issues. Okay,
Absolutely.
I just want to say that. So finding someone that you can, open up to, okay, and they can be biased, and more than anything, that they will listen to you on purpose. Okay, listen non-judgmentally to hear you and to understand you, and hopefully you all can begin to talk through that. That's what I would suggest. What would you say, Eddie?
So
Personally?
I want to say that just understanding a baseline of therapy. Therapy is different than a calling. Therapy is a skill set.
Bingo.
We as a therapist community, we know what helps anxiety. We know what helps depression. We have evidence-based structures of how to help people navigate through the things that they've gone through in trauma, which makes what a pastor can do different than what a therapist can do, but both of those still being necessary for the whole of the person, right? And I think I've experienced pastors that got caught up in the idea that they're going to a therapist instead of going to God,
Right.
when both of those things are necessary. The other piece is the the way that I introduce, I guess, walk their clients into understanding trauma just from a minimalist perspective is I have bologna trauma. That's the only thing my mama ever had in the refrigerator. I would never peel another piece of another red ring off a piece of meat as long as I live.
Tell it.
And you know what? Not only that, but like my partners, if they eat bologna, we gonna have a struggle with having bologna in the refrigerator. My kids ain't gonna have bologna because I'm gonna buy ham or I'm gonna buy turkey. I'm not buying bologna, And so it's real, I guess, tongue in cheek when we're talking about it being like bologna. But when you see how me not caring for bologna travels with me, it can get to a dangerous situation, because if I'm held hostage and the only thing they serving is bologna sandwiches, am I willing to starve, or am I willing to take a bite of something that I've told myself I wasn't going to do?
Right.
So apply that to uh, being raised by a parent that was on substances, or having an absent parent, or a parent that wasn't honest with you, or a parent that was abusive, all of the abuses, any of them, sexual, physical, mental, and apply how that travels with you. And so until you intervene in carrying that baggage with you, it's like bags behind you. It's just bags of all of that stuff behind you. And when you are in your relationship, what happens is when you have no other response, you go into those bags to look for stuff that you recall from the past, because that's all you got. That's all you got until you learn something new. And so it's like, okay, I remember my mama did it this way, so I'm gonna do it this way, not realizing what Apostle Lynn was saying when she left the house. She didn't know people hadn't been beat up. So you don't know any other ways to tend to that. So it's very important to go through those bags, filter through them. I don't need this. I don't need that. I don't need this. And if you've been through an abusive childhood, I'm inclined to say you don't need nothing, because anything positive that you even perceived to have gotten from an abusive childhood was forged in the fires of abuse. So it's still tainted. So a lot of it needs to get rid of all of that stuff and to restart over. But that's the journey from my perspective. Like you have to go through those bags. But in order to do that, you got to be able to acknowledge and understand what those bags are and what's in them. And that can be done. It can be done through pastoral counseling. But then another level of it will be done through therapy. And then
Right.
another level will be done just through reading books, educating yourself and having conversations and telling stories.
Thank you. And even through listen to music, I mean, there's some genres of music that's very
Hmm.
therapeutic. So you're right.
Yeah.
I just want to pause and say hello. I see Dr. Amber Jackson on tonight. Nafonda Gibson Ross, thank you. Miss Jennifer. I see Dr. Noreen from New York on tonight. Good to see all of you. And one thing Dr. Jackson says, she says here, she said, yeah, also all pastors are not trained and educated. That's it. Look, I ain't talking about nobody. Just talking about what I'm talking about. Just because you're a pastor, you see what I'm saying? You don't have training in everything across the board, you
Yeah.
know? Uh, so that's good. Thank you. I see Monica Jackson. See Dr. Fuller on tonight. Good to see you all on tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Chime in. I was trying to see if someone else had a question. I saw Lucretia Finch Henderson. Oh, I saw the school teacher, Miss Omi Johnson. Good to see you all tonight. Yeah, you all got some questions or some comments? Chime in. Let's talk about a few things tonight. Come on, Apostle Lynn. I didn't give you a chance to chime in. You know, we get wordy, and as all of us are therapists and pastors and helping professionals, we can get to talking. So,
Well,
what were you going to
I'm
say?
I'm so glad that you brought this up because this is one of the reasons why I did not just learn how to sing my way through or how to preach my way through. Preaching is good, but it didn't. I could preach over top of the pain, and as soon as the anointing was gone, so there were times I couldn't even take my robe off because I was stuck in the. It solidified up under that. And as far as pastoral care, I think that if pastors are not trained in specific things, they should probably just stick to the things that they're good at or that they are trained. And I can say that from a pastor's perspective. If I offend somebody, sorry, we just talking. It's because I believe that it's very, very important to learn how to deal with real, true situational issues when it comes to dealing with your congregation. And so when I say that I'm a graduate and I teach at Intervisions Institute for Spiritual Development, it took it from a different perspective. We took it from a perspective of dealing with the jots and the tittles of a person's mind and their hearts and where you're going from here. I learned from several different modalities of worship as opposed to hand clapping, foot stomping, singing, um, sweet, swing low, sweet chariot. I did. And one of the things that I thought was very important is to be very specific with what you need. And sometimes I think that pastors should be referrals, should have referrals. I beg your pardon, and because they don't have all the answers, they do not.
Right.
And I have met with people who, from a coaching perspective, that did not necessarily want to go into therapy or did not want to speak to their pastor. I could say this if you don't mind, having been a survivor of military sexual trauma, um, I didn't trust therapists. No one could help me as far as I was concerned. And what happened to me happened in church, so the pastor couldn't help me. And I then began to mutilate. There was no one who was familiar enough with the cuts to recognize something was wrong. And
Wow.
so I stayed in a place of very statuesque and stuck. And it wasn't until I was prepared to start, taking a hammer at myself, if you will, and breaking away some of those things. And the Holy Spirit really sent the greatest therapist on the planet for me. And so that I could just kind of unpack some things. And the problem that I had was that I could just kind of smile on top of it. And Dr. Watson, I don't know if you know this about me, but I also do comedy professionally. I did sketch comedy, I did stand up comedy. So you could laugh on top of it and go home and feel okay. until you came down off that high. And so this is where it is extremely important to be able to understand those stuck points and really understand how to uh, come out. Now at one point, and I'll say this and I'll be complete with this portion, I went to therapy, and because I was devastated. I Somebody has to have some answers for me. And so I strategically chose an African American woman. I wanted I wanted someone to at least be able to say, "Well, sister, I hear you." And when we finished, she looked at me and said, "Do you have any of this written down?" I said, "I do." She says, "You are an amazing storyteller." I got caught up in the story. I don't even think I could. I don't think I could help you. I think you should probably write books, and you should. So by the time I left there crying because I knew that that was the experience that I'd had, and that I'd had similar experiences, as opposed to someone who could say, "What can we do to support you to this next level?" Instead, people were simply impressed with my ability to describe it. That didn't help me. So once I was able to find someone who could look past the fact that I could conjugate a verb, or someone who could look beyond the fact that I could beat the back off a tambourine, or someone who could look beyond the fact that maybe it was just an interesting kind of story, then I was able to truly unpack and address some of those stuck points on my own.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I go back to what Eddie said a few minutes ago. It made me think about the Erica Badu song, Bag Lady.
Yeah,
Like you said, you got to take all of those things out of the bag and look at them and really be able to identify them one by one. See, it's
yeah,
tough if you try to put all of that stuff out of the bag up on the table at one time. And that's
yeah,
what's happening. It's overwhelming. So you've really got to take it out, unpack it, perhaps try and work through and tunnel through one thing at a time,
yeah,
one thing at a time. And of course, you can't see it. I got the bricks up here tonight because I figured this was tough, so I put the bricks up. But my overall theme is unmasking, and I have the person with the mask. And that's what has to happen, because as long as we're masking, we do just what you said. We can go out, we can work, we can do comedy, we can go to church, we can hallelujah, we can hang out with our friends. But then when we go home, put the key in the door,
yeah.
go in, it's nobody but me and all of those feelings, all of those thoughts, all of those emotions. Then what do I do? You see?
Mhm.
And that's what's happening to a lot of people, even people who are trying to have relationships. Okay? Even people who are trying to have relationships. Uh, Again, you're gonna hear me say it 1,000 times because a lot of people know me. It's part of my mantra. I ain't talking about nobody, just talking about what I'm talking about. You got people who live out of image day after day, you see, because for whatever reason they have not began to work through, or they don't know how to, or they have not met someone who they trust enough to work through some of the issues. Okay, we know that the childhood trauma, it impacts us into our adulthood, as we said, leading to, listen, all of this stuff that we deal with, mental health issues like anxiety, depression, PTSD, what is it, PTSD, uh, and just difficulty forming healthy relationships. A lot of people turn to substance abuse. Listen, a lot of people got a lot of those bottles sitting around with stuff in it that they trying to get through some of that pain. Physical abuse, okay? And then guess what? Then it start affecting not only your mental health, it starts to affect your physical health now, okay? And then struggling with self-esteem. Oh my goodness. So, it leads to some or all of those things, and you feel like now you don't have a sense of safety, and you really struggle with the ability to regulate your emotions for real. You see, and those are things that we deal with when we are trying to tunnel through abuse and trauma. Um, I think I saw someone say, Dr. Noreen said that is why everyone needs to have a mentor, a coach, and a model. Okay. uh Miss Jennifer, good to see her on tonight. I just love it when I have all age groups. I think Miss Jennifer's 70 something, but she says, I never thought about childhood trauma carrying over into adulthood and marriage. She says, my father was abusive at times to my mother. Me being 8 years younger than my deceased sister, I don't remember much she did. However, he loved his girls. It was alcohol that was his demon. She said, thanks for listening. Yeah. Um, wow. That's good to see you on tonight. Crystal King. I think she's in Cali. Hope everything's well in your area from the fires. So listen, abuse and trauma is it has no respect of person. It's cross culture, cross gender, every socioeconomic um, status. So yeah, that's stuff that we have to deal with. Uh, Come on, talk to us, bro, Eddie. What you thinking? Chime in.
Um, as far as the relationship part goes, um, I think the struggle that a lot of us have because of the traumas that we have is that we try to tunnel our way into the same healthy relationship. Well, into the same relationship, hoping that it can become healthy. And I think that a lot of us struggle with the idea of actually letting those things go. And I think that because when I hear tunneling through abuse and trauma to get to a healthy relationship, ideally it's a different relationship. You've had to learn the lessons you learned from the traumatic relationships in the past. You've had to let them go and you've had to move past them. Um, but I think that a lot of the traumas that we have need us needing people so deeply that we end up tunneling back into the same situation, not realizing that, we kind of needed to tunnel out a little bit further into a different direction. And that piece goes to just understanding, yes, from what Miss Allen was saying, um, from what Miss Alice was saying, just knowing that, like, how do these things transfer over from childhood to adulthood? How do they transfer over? What does it look like? See, my bologna trauma transfers over to ain't no bologna in my refrigerator. Ain't nobody around me finna eat no bologna. And when I go to a party with bologna sandwiches, I'm probably not gonna eat, you know. But what does it do to you when you grew up listening to parents argue?
Yes.
It could be that you get into a relationship and you hate to argue, but that also means that you allow somebody to steamroll you because you're limiting using your voice. And a bunch of different outcomes can come from that. That depends on temperament. That depends on a bunch of different things. We all have our own set of rose-colored glasses, but it takes investigating what your early experience was and looking at your present and saying, where did this come from? Where did that come from? Where did it? Because everything comes. The only knowledge you have is what you've been through,
Right.
and what you learn from there. So if you have a behavior now that's a problem, it came from somewhere. It came from somewhere. And so that investigation is important in order to get to that point of that healthy relationship.
That's it. That's it. And you're so right. The environment in which we grew up in, it heavily influences us, and until we're exposed to something different and something new, that's all we know. So we start going into our adulthood doing the same things, you know, that our parent or grandparent or auntie or whoever raised us, we start doing the same things. Then when we have children, listen, we start talking to them like we were talked to.
Right.
We start raising them like we were raised. Hey, if everything we did, we got a belt. Listen, I know they don't talk that language now, but if we got a belt, look, now we get a belt for our kids. You see what I'm saying? So until we learn better or exposed to better and have a desire to do different, we do the same things because that's all we know. I have a saying: we don't know what we don't know.
What we don't know.
You know, so you're exactly right. But from where I sit as a relationship therapist, and likewise for Eddie who's joining us tonight, and even some of the people that you see, Apostle Lynn, listen, this trauma is wreaking havoc on adults who are trying to have relationships. And I'm not just talking about intimate courtship and marriage relationships. Adults in any aspect of a relationship, that trauma and that abuse, it affects how you deal with a coworker at a copier that speaks to you in the morning. It depends on what you got on your mind.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just spoke, have a good day, and you go off. You know what I'm saying? Or sometimes checking out at Walmart, and that person is like, you're not even there. He or she just doing what they doing, and they fussing about their schedule, and nobody else came in, and they ready to go, and they sick of this, and they gonna take, you see what I'm saying, all this stuff. And you really spoke to it a minute ago, Eddie, when it says, I mean, there's no one thing that you can pinpoint on or for everybody, because we think different.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be in a similar situation, but my response to that situation is going to be totally different than yours, Apostle Lynn, or yours, Eddie. You see,
Mm-hmm.
same thing holds true for growing up in the same environment. I've seen children, same parent, grown up in the same house, but this one over here is totally whoa. You're like, what? We got the same parents. So speak a little bit to that, Eddie. What do you think? I know we can't say what determines that because we don't know, but what are some of the things you believe affects um, just say two children growing up in the same household, but then they just totally seem like they are from, I'm just gonna say it like this, different planets, even though they were born in the same household. We know we got different personalities, but what else affects that? What would you say?
So the core component is called a temperament, which
Okay.
is that thing that we born with that you can't quite put your finger on. It just ends up being the lens from which a child interprets the world. So if you've dealt with it, kids in any capacity, you probably came across that easy kid, the kid that don't, no problems can come across that kid. And then you come with the happy kid, the kid that'll run up to strangers, and then the kids that'll hide behind mom and daddy's leg, the opposite of the kid that run up to strangers. You got one kid that'll climb up to the top of the couch and then dive off and then hit the floor and then jump back up happy, ready to go do it again. It's like that adventurous, ambitious child. And then you got the child that you can't even get to talk to people and get them to daycare, the withdrawn child. And then you got the rebellious child. Now apply what just a whooping would do to each of those children. The easy child will be fine. The happy child will be fine. The rebellious child is going to rebel more. The withdrawn child is going to withdraw more. The adventurous adrenaline child is probably going to create situations to get more of that adrenaline. So it's the same event can be looked at in different ways. The example I use is in a car wreck. When a car wreck happens, the police that's driving by are trying to determine, if there was any crime in progress, and the lawyer's driving by trying to figure out who was at fault, and the doctor's driving by trying to figure out who was
Okay.
harmed and who was damaged. The EMS is trying to figure out if anybody is bleeding and needs some immediate assistance, and add a whole bunch of other stuff. The mechanic is trying to figure out what kind of damage is done on the cars. The car manufacturer is wondering if the car that wrecked was a part of some system and problems we had. Add a whole bunch of stuff. Everybody has their own vantage point of that situation. And so two kids who have a father that's not present, one kid can be like, well, I mean, that was his decision, ain't got nothing to do with me. And one kid can be like, that I need him though. And those two kids are going to go on paths to where one has a path of anger and resentment and the other one could go on a neutral path. But it depends on those temperaments.
Gotcha.
And that starts at birth. It ain't like that piece picks up at a certain point. It's like from birth, you're already looking at the world different than your siblings looking at it. That's how you got twins that have different experiences about stuff, because a lot of twins do have similar temperaments, but the ones that have different temperaments, is like so much can be similar about you, and everything else can be so different. And I'm learning that now at 40 with a brother that's 37, and the way that he recalls things and the way that I recall things completely different. I'm like, how could you get that from that? And it's just those differences in brains. And not only that, but like at a certain point, you begin being influenced by certain people, and they begin being influenced by certain people. And he watches certain TV shows, and I watch certain TV shows, and we get our own knowledge about the world from different places. And so we start to, diverge into different paths. And that's how you get that situation. But it starts at birth, it ends up in what your social environment is like, and then how to treat your treatment is. Because again, even in abuse, one child can be born with a very high tolerance for abuse and struggle and pain, and the other sibling can be given the same abuse but have a very low tolerance for that experience. And so you got somebody who come out of it is like, okay, it hurt, but I can make it. And then for one person, they cripple for the rest of their life because of that experience. So there's a lot of junctures where it kind of fractures off, but for the most part, it starts with siblings where that temperament is different.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much. You want to speak to some of that, Apostle Lynn?
You
That's
know,
good.
yeah, that was very good.
Yes.
Eddie, I'm my parents' only child. I wasn't though. My mother had rubella while she was
Mm.
pregnant with my brother, and after 3 years, the baby was gone. However, the night that he went back to heaven, I was sitting beside him. I was 5, he was 3. Had no idea what a photographic memory even looked like, but I could tell you what he had on. I could tell you what was going on in the house. We went to a prayer meeting at Brenda's house in Rochester. I mean, I can tell you every detail. Out of the clear blue, my cousin starts to sing, everything is gonna be all right, be all right. And in the midst of the baby, on the ground, EMS is doing everything to bring him back. So as a result, I knew that people could leave. I knew that. I knew that I was alone. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew that. So my parents went their own direction, and I was alone. I did everything alone. I was prepared to only be alone. So when my life started to shift, to where I was coming up in some age, my father was a tyrannical man. He was Vietnam. He was mean as the devil. He was mean as hell. And though he was hilarious, and so during his funny times, you kind of want to laugh, but you don't know when the mean times are going to come. So I was always on guard. So this is when I had to develop a relationship with God, because I was ready every minute, every second for the second that he was going to say something and I was going to get to say something back. The very first F bomb I ever popped off, I popped it at him because I figured it's your turn. It's your turn, brother. And so the years of it's just you, the years of it's not going to get any better, the years of believing, the only thing I had was if I trust in this God that I heard about. There was nothing, there was no foundation stable. We had never heard of therapy. We had never known that there was going to be a time that anything was going to get better. So I was with my grandmother for a period of time. And Dr. Watson, I penned a letter to my mother because I knew I lived at 606 uh, 630 Michigan Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14203. I knew that. I wrote her a letter and I said at 10, um, in if you don't come in 10 days, I will run. This intricately detailed mind that was so traumatized. The only thing I had was God. And I would sit and I'd write letters to God. And I took a nail and I scribed my mother's name on a tree in the backyard because I knew that if I could talk to God, and then I could talk to my mother through this tree. And so it developed a different level of relationship in me to unpack the level of brokenness and sadness and disappointment. I had nowhere to start. As far as I was concerned, when I would go into therapy, the therapist was like, "So what'd you have for lunch?" Because we couldn't. There was nothing. No one knew how to unpack, or at least the people that I was going to did not know how to unpack it, and my pastors didn't either. It
Right.
had to be me and God, and God and me. No matter how many times I tried. Do you know the scripture that says God took the solitary and placed them in families? So I was in church and they said, everybody go to your family. Well, I haven't family. And no
Yeah.
one grabbed me. No one said anything. So I didn't have them. I didn't have the pastor didn't have the knowledge. See, I would never let that happen at the People's Hope because I experienced it. So
Right.
we didn't know where to start when it came to um, let's find a way to make her better. I had to go by the old songs that really, if I plant my feet on higher ground, maybe that'll work. Or, I learned all kinds of music. I love all kinds of music. The only kind of music I don't like is techno. I don't get that. I'm sure it has some value to it, but with all things considered, I didn't even have the words to say, can you show me a better way, a
Right.
better
And
way to
that's
do
it. We don't know.
it.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
And even going into this century, I'm going to say in 2025, therapy and counseling is still taboo to a great degree of our people. I'm just going to keep it real. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, most of the time when couples come to see me, uh, one has already filed for the divorce or they contemplate divorce. One of them have already left the relationship mentally if they haven't left physically.
Hmm.
Okay, so they're just indulging the other one to come to therapy,
Yeah.
but they're out, they're gone.
Mhm.
So this is why I know it's important for us to do just what it says here on this banner, to take a candid look at all of these: faith, dating, love, marriage, money, and sex, and some more. But all of these things are part of things that make us human.
Mhm.
I want to say it like that,
Yeah,
okay?
that works.
Because sometimes, in my opinion, personally and professionally, I believe we try to live outside of the fact that we are a human being.
Hmm.
you know, with real thoughts, real feelings, real emotions. And we're in denial about a lot of things for whatever reason. And I'll say it like this: some of it is affected by, of course, our upbringing, but a lot of it is also, I believe, affected by our history, our culture, and by our religion.
Yeah.
What y'all think about that? And,
Absolutely.
we're brought
Yeah.
up under a certain belief system. So I say it like this: when I was a child, I brought up under that belief system. I understood, I thought, I did. But now I'm an adult. So a lot of the beliefs you know, I'm not going to say they weren't bad beliefs or whatever, but when you really come into the knowledge and understanding of a lot of things and begin to get revelation and unpack those things, you're like, whoo, that ain't working for me. And, not passing judgment, I'm not so sure it worked for them. It probably was just a hand me down. And so they're carrying, on that legacy or whatever that was passed on to them, the do's and the don'ts in their belief system. But as we head into adulthood, trying to have a relationship, you so eloquently gave us the scenario of the children, Eddie. I appreciate that. So now here we are, manhood, African American man. You're one of those. So
Mhm.
you're taught that you're not supposed to cry. You're really not supposed to show emotions, but you going into this courtship or this relationship and you don't want to show any emotion. So how do uh, we help them deal with that? Someone asked about dealing with narcissism. Listen, that's a whole show by itself right there. So we're gonna come back to that narcissism. That's a whole show by itself. So do you uh, see a lot of men or a lot of boys who are just emotionless,
They're
Eddie?
not emotionless. They
Okay,
definitely have emotion. It's just that the acceptable emotion to express for men has been anger. And
okay,
so all of their emotions pools at some point into anger. Even like a surprise birthday party, everybody saying surprise, you can get mad easily, because I don't know what to do with what's supposed to be happy emotions. I know what anger is. And that's how you see a lot of irrational male behavior.
okay,
Now, I zoom very, very deep into this conversation because this is a bigger situation. It's about patriarchy, really. It's about the intersection between patriarchy and white supremacy,
okay.
essentially, because black men are operating off of a white male template of male existence in America.
Speak to
Like,
that. Speak to that.
as a community, we have not sat down and said, hey, how do we want to exist as black men? And a lot of that is because white supremacy hasn't granted us the power to actually, create our own narrative, because narratives keep being created about us, whether it's black on black crime, whether it's the school to prison pipeline. You keep talking about all of these things. And so white men have luxuries that black men don't have, you know, and that though in no way means that black men don't have access to the harm that patriarchy does to women, because a lot of black men will say, well, no, white patriarchy, that's white man stuff. We don't have power. But if you zoom into a black household, you have the power. If you zoom into the black community, black men have the power. So there's responsibility in that end. But in the context of black men being emotional and expressing vulnerabilities, we operating off of a system that I've read when it didn't exist like this in Africa. It existed like this once you got colonized and your
Yeah.
brain got reformulated to operate in the way that European white men operated, you know? And
Absolutely.
so a lot of that is we have to deconstruct patriarchy, which
That's
is a
it.
problem because it's an aesthetic problem, because that same template that says we're supposed to be men says that we're supposed to be at the top of the hierarchy. So deconstructing it is going to take power away that we have been artificially manufactured for us. It's the same way with white supremacy. In order for to brown people in America to have a better experience, white people have to give up power willingly. And it's the same situation for men. But one thing that men don't realize, black men don't realize particularly, is that that system harms us more than it helps us. And inadvertently, it harms black women through the harms that come from us from trying to match this template of a system that don't give us. And we turn our anger and frustration towards our women versus saying it's white man stuff that's doing this.
Wow.
So
Now that's power. Wait. You need to say that again. You need to say that again. Somebody needs to hear that one right there.
black men end up getting mad at our women because instead of getting mad at the actual system that limits us from being able to have what we desire to have with our women, it's just that's just what happens. And so a big part of it was been successful for men, for me, even though I'm saying this in a when I say this in a therapeutic setting, it's with a healthy relationship. It's
Right.
with knowing my intent and communication. Because when you just say this in a barbershop, you're going to get booed out the barbershop, you know. But having that one-on-one conversation and saying, no, this is why you can't be vulnerable. And they'd be like, no, women won't allow us to be vulnerable. Men in your life won't allow you to be vulnerable. What are you talking about? Women operate off of how men have said we are supposed to be. So men originally said we not emotional, we not vulnerable, we not that. And women said, okay, well, they not emotional, they're not vulnerable. And so again, that comes from patriarchy. It don't come from women. And so understanding that a greater system is at fault for this, and your greater responsibility and accountability is to dismantle that system within yourself so that you can navigate these relationships healthily. Now that's real deep into the pot right there, you know, because like that's a show itself, you know. But that helping men understand that we are in a condition that we didn't ask for, but that condition granted us power that we have to be very, very aware that we have in order to not use it inappropriately. And some men have power parties, you know. Like I talk about white supremacy and I talk about patriarchy, and I say that every one of us men have a cool, cold cup of patriarchy sitting in front of us that we can sip from at any point.
Wow.
It's our priority has to be to see that cup and not drink from it. You know, and there's a lot of men who just love drinking from it and sipping from it because they're abusers. They like control. They like the power that those systems grant them. But it takes you being a responsible person to know that you don't have to live this life you do. So when a man tell me you can't cry, we can't cry, but you can. No, you physically can. Like, you got the same tear ducts as women have. You can cry. What you're saying is socially is not acceptable for you to do so, and you'll get criticism in the society that we live in, because if they see you shedding tears, it will compromise how they perceive you from the vantage point of that masculinity that you have that was created by a culture that don't even align with you or like you.
That's it.
I can keep going. So I'm
I mean, listen, you own it. I just shared some of the same thing, not using your exact words. I just shared some of the same things a couple of days ago with some friends of mine in Atlanta. You know, we're trying to model people who have become examples for us, you know, and it doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for us. You know, there are some things that I believe, and people might not agree, and it's okay. There's some things that I believe are culturally specific to us.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying with the children, it's intrinsic. I mean, it's in our DNA. You see, and it's just the way it is. Go ahead, Apostle Lynn.
Let me add this little piece. Another part of it, a cultural piece, is like just the idea of a stay-at-home wife. There were ordinances all around the countries that wouldn't allow Black women to stay at home and not work because white people needed them to be cooking their food and watching their kids.
Children. Yeah.
And so Black women not working ain't even a part of our American cultural DNA. So to take away that thing that is built into Black women, as we see that their desires, they have more college degrees, they making more money, they have more education, they are starting more small businesses. That through that trauma, that cultural trauma is built into that DNA. So it is against our best interest to be saying you shouldn't work. The interest should be in you can do whatever you desire to do because it's built in you. And if you do not want to, that is a conversation to have. But like pigeonholing every one of them into a system because, you know, the predominant culture, white people able to give their women that life while they inadvertently holding Black men back from having the kind of salaries that will allow them to give Black women that, and that same system forcing Black women to stay at home when we struggling with getting, you see how all of this stuff, it's all just like a trickle down trauma. You know, think about trickle down economics, trickle down trauma. You know, but from a household perspective, bigger from a cultural perspective, but from a system of men that created this world. If you were white, wealthy, straight, Christian, and upper class, you having a blast. You having a blast. But if you're outside of that, you got some kind of struggle. I'm sorry, Apostle Lynn. You can take it from there.
Oh no!
Listen. Let me just say this before you go. They got some struggles too. They got some trauma and some different stuff going on too. Let me tell you something. I know you all know this, but just because you got money and you little bit of you think you got power, you're not exempt from abuse and trauma. You
Or
know, a lot
broken.
of them, or it's just an image. They do a good job screening it, from everybody or what have you. But trust me, they've got
and
trauma and
and I
abuse
look at it
within it.
from the lens of they their trauma doesn't include any intersectionality when they're a
Okay.
part of those groups. Is what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like those other groups have default trauma. Black folks may have a default set of trauma that's gonna happen, and white people don't have it. Like that group of white people,
Right.
because there's white people that's poor, and they can say all day, well, I'm not rich, so how do I have white privilege? Well, your great 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 granddaddy had an opportunity to do it. Just because he messed that opportunity up, don't mean that he didn't have it. Like you gotta go back in a time machine and talk to granddaddy about why he wasn't saving money and acquiring land, and he done left you with these alcoholic genes that you got. That's the question to go ask granddaddy. But no, that don't, just because white privilege don't mean you have something now. It means that your lineage has not given you barriers to not having something taken away from you like other groups have. Women,
Yeah.
brown people, LGBT, all of these different intersections. Even poor people. Like I can empathize with a poor white person. But that poor white person, if they put on the right kind of suit and get the right kind of haircut, they're gonna get a way better shot at getting that management job than I will.
Yeah, they will.
And even if you got a master's or a PhD, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, y'all. See, we need to be on 2 hours rather than an hour and 15
Yeah.
minutes. This is because we have just touched the surface of this. So when we start coming on talking about tunneling through abuse and trauma, we just touched the surface.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to get into now you're trying to have a healthy relationship, but you got all these thoughts, you got all these triggers, you're being reminded of so many things that happened to you, so going forward, wow, it's a wow.
It's a
and,
wow.
and here we are. You see,
Mhm.
and it looks different for everybody. It's not cookie cutter when they come see Eddie, when they come see me, when they come to Apostle Lynn for pastoral care. Listen, we don't have no cookie cutter script written out here that we can pass out to everybody. You've got to be able, and I know you know this, to deal with everybody one-on-one as an individual.
Yeah.
I don't care if twins come in, but
Mhm.
these things I want us to know, they are affecting relationships full speed ahead.
Yeah. I want to just toss something at Brother Eddie, and maybe you can just kind of give some thought to it. Because I'm finding I'm 58. I'm divorced.
Mhm.
I'm preparing to retire from this job I have because I've got some other things that I'm doing. I'm ready to shift in my life. And there those men that you were just referring to, they're watching. Oh, they are. But you know the kind that speak? The one who wants mama.
Mhm.
You
Wait,
know
say
the
that
one
again. I missed it. Wait. I was listening too hard. I didn't hear you. Say that again. I'm
I
sorry.
I said there I'm preparing. My life is shifting and
Okay.
the men are watching. And I don't blame them. I do not. They're watching, but the ones that speak are the ones who want mama. The ones who want me to be mama, or the ones who say, well, I will give up everything to come and live with you.
What?
Those are the kind. And so now I've done my work. I've done my work on myself, but there is still an aspect of me that makes me wonder, what is it that causes a grown man to want me to be his mama and take care of him? I'm not saying because they look at my sons and say, "Oh, she just did such a good job." I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I mean, I got a proposal about 2 weeks ago from a man who wants to come and live with me and let me take care of him. And this,
Oh,
we're not talking about men in the street. We're talking about for real, who've raised families and those. So I really want to understand. I don't know. I don't know if it's me. It could be. Maybe they look at me and say, "Oh, she loves Jesus and she'll love me." I don't know, because that don't make sense to me. But I do want. I am interested because there are those who show up with the purpose of me taking care of them.
Listen, I need a drink of my tea on that. I don't know. Speak to it, Eddie.
Listen. It's several things going on.
All
Okay.
right, because I
Yeah,
got my pen. I'm writing.
The
right.
first thing is if you understand the concept of a monopoly, that's when one group, tries to create a supply and demand type situation where we have all the supply and so we can charge whatever we want for the demand, right?
Okay.
Look at that concept in the terms of how a mother has a relationship with her son. This is generally going to be a codependent relationship where you have a son whose mama monopolized all of the love, all of the care. They didn't teach their son that you can get care from other women. They didn't teach you can get love from other people. They said, you get it from me. I'm the only place you can get that from. And so when mama dies or when child moves on, that man is a desperate need to find something to replace that monopolized the experience that he had, where nobody is giving me the stuff like I got from my mama, and I have to find somebody that's mommy-esque in order to get it from.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I got it.
Right? That's
Yes.
that's one part. The other part to it is I lost my thought, but y'all stick with me for a second because it's gonna come
That's
back.
all right. Come on with it.
The other part of it is there is a shift in society
Yes.
when it comes to men when we talk about patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So when a father is raising a daughter, there's no shift after she ages out. After a father raises a son, there's no shift after he ages out. After a mother raises a daughter, there's no shift after she ages out. But when a mother who raises a son, when that son ages out, he is automatically granted with power that makes him hierarchically in society better than her. He has more power than her as a man. And that power in our society comes along with the idea that he is supposed to be this domineering, strong, never weak figure, but he's always been that under his mother. So he's looking for somebody to be under in a society that tells him that he ain't supposed to have that no more. You can't have that anymore. And that's the danger of patriarchy, is because you can have that. You just can't have it by pigeonholing any black woman you find into being that role, because only a black woman who desires to be in that role is somebody who you can get it from effectively. But they just looking for anybody to fit the role, and they like, well, I know this puzzle piece don't look like it fit, but if I just push it down hard enough, it'll be what I need it to be.
Wow.
And so that's kind of the dynamic that those men. It's a particular class of men that have that kind of experience with their mama, who may have lost that mama, or who just don't get that kind of experience from mama. Because when mama found her relationship, she dropped that stuff with son too. It was like, no, I get this from my son, and my son get this from me. But when she find love, it's like, okay, son, you got to fend for yourself. And sometimes that be the reason why that son end up in that position, which gonna grow some resentment. And for that person that's in her life and for her, because you told me this is the only place I get it from, and now you're giving it to this other person. So a whole bunch of those bundles of experiences create that dynamic. I think from what I know it's some other causes of that. That's what I've seen.
Yeah. And see, it goes back to what we started talking about. It's childhood trauma in some form that's now affecting him as a grown man, not being biased, because childhood trauma affects grown women as well. But right now we're talking about men who think it's okay, or that's their need, to find a mama-like figure, to move in with, for them to take care of. You see? So now you got it, Apostle Lynn.
That's it.
All right. So you gonna say I do?
Not gonna happen. Eventually, but not for that.
Well, and another part is that's what makes it important for women to also dismantle those patriarchal sentiments within them, because otherwise, a part of a woman who has not done that will want that man to be up under them and will end up in their relationship, and that man will extract every bit of her that there is to extract until there's nothing left.
Yeah.
But then eventually, when she comes into herself, then there becomes resentment. There becomes anger, all of the above. You see what I'm saying? It seems to be working well for a while, because she's like, yes, he's into me. I don't have to worry about him going here and doing that, da 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 da. And after a while, you can't even breathe. He's stuck to you like glue more
Absolutely.
than your child was. You know what I'm saying? And you're doing more things for him now than you. Yeah. So anyway, that's a whole nother subject.
So another part to that is, so like my ideal relationship style is an interdependent relationship, to where we both have our own lives and we bring them into a bubble that makes sense to both of us. And Cheryl Lee Ralph, the actress, had an
Yeah.
interview recently.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Did you see that interview?
Yes, I did.
Where she said, my husband is the 53rd senator in Philadelphia.
Yes.
He has his own life. I have my own life. He
Bingo.
has his own house. I have my own house. He gets to shine in his light. I get to shine in my light.
Yes.
It's perfect. Like, I like that. Like, I love hearing when a woman has just dismantled this internal need for men. And frankly, when men have dismantled this internal need for women, and they're able to have their own existences, and they
Yes.
bring them in together and formulate how they want to, because those trauma responses of I just need people, or that social conditioning of where I'm supposed to have somebody,
Yes.
it makes you make decisions that are not always in your best interest. It's just filling in the blank for something the society told you that you're supposed to want and have.
That's it. Or either following traditionalism. You see what I'm saying? Or like you say, just because you feel like, oh, I'm already 30 and I don't have anybody, or I'm not married, or I don't have a baby. So you feel like, oh, your time is, ticking and that kind of thing. Listen, it's just so much. But if we're going to have healthy relationships, I want to say it like this. We've got to do more than keep tunneling. I love both of your definitions for the tunneling. And I don't know, Holy Spirit dropped that word in there. I don't even know where it came from. But we've got to do more, I believe, than tunnel through abuse and trauma. Okay? We can't keep tunneling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can't keep tunneling. So because we keep tunneling into our adulthood, into relationships, and if we're not careful, we just tunnel our whole life. We trying to tunnel through, and we never get on a solid footing. So we kind of out of balance. We're trying to have a relationship, but we never really balanced. We're not looking for perfection, but we are looking to be better.
Oh, it's got to be better.
Yeah, we're not looking for perfection, but we are trying to look for health and wholeness so that we can be better, so that we don't have to walk around on eggshells and feel anxiety. We don't have to be depressed, or, have PTSD, and we have to take just tons and tons of, medications, or we can't do anything because we always feel like somebody is, out to get us, or watching us, or what have you. Or we're trying to have a relationship now, so we don't trust. How in the world are you going to have a relationship, go into a marriage, and you have no trust? That's a whole nother ball of wax right there, But all of these things are a result of some type of abuse and or trauma. So here we are. What do we do? How can, and I'm just throwing this out there, we're not going to try to answer it, but how can we as parents begin to look at, generationally, how some parents have, I'm going to say it like this, parented, and some things that worked well and some things that really didn't work well. And maybe think about shifting some of our parenting, shifting, how we talk to our children, shifting, the things that we introduce them to, those kind of things. Those are some of the things that I offer. Yes, I know your mama was a screamer or a cusser. Your daddy was, okay, I get all of that. But is that how you want to be? You see what I'm saying? Is that how you want to raise your children? Because without a doubt, our childhood, it affects us as we grow into adulthood. And if we don't seek help, we pass the same thing down to our children. Okay. So
Let me
uh,
let me add a little piece to that.
come on.
Um, I want to start, even regardless of how old you are, how old your children are. Start with normalizing asking your children how they experienced you.
How they experience.
How did you experience me, son? How
Okay.
did you experience me, daughter? What is your experience? And be ready for whatever you finna hear. Free your children from the shackles of accepting whatever you did because you did the best job you could. Because there's a whole bunch of kids out here saying, well, they did the best they could with what they had. Well, all I'm saying is let them identify that if they the ones telling you that. Well, I did the best that I could, son. Okay, well, that inadvertently is acknowledging that there was some better you can do. I just want to know what that would look like. Because
Gotcha. Gotcha.
the stuff you were saying, I come to learn that it's a bunch of different ways that we could have existed back then. So kind of
Wow.
why was you kind of doing it? Like that accountability can in just a conversation be so freeing for a child that feels like they have to keep this pristine image of you in their mind and to the rest of the world.
Yes.
So we need to get parents need to get comfortable with saying, what was your experience of me? And just be ready for what's going to come out. And if you think of that concept and inside of you is like, I don't know if I want to ask that question, then you need to ask that question more than anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Right.
I agree with you. I actually did have that conversation with my sons. I did, and I wanted us to kind of, as I said, unpack some things and tell me
Mhm.
what you would have needed if you needed something different. What did you learn? What did you wish? Whatever. We had some very candid conversations. And just a couple of weeks ago, my youngest son said to me, "You don't listen." And I says, "Tell me what I'm not listening to." He says, "I only asked you how someone was doing. You went to call them. I didn't ask you to call them. I just wondered how they were doing." I said, "I figured that you wanted to speak to them." He said, "No, never said that. I never said that. I wanted to speak with you. I just asked that." And so, but yeah, we have had those conversations, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I wanted to make sure if there was anything that I did or did not do that I thought needed to be addressed, healed, brought to the light, laid on the altar, that I was willing to do that, and we did on every level.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, a lot of our children are vocal now,
Mhm.
and they will ask questions and they will state their opinions about some things. And I'm just going to tell you, some parents and some grandparents can't handle that. And I believe as long as it's done respectfully, we need to be able to do just what we said when you came on at first, be able to hear their voice you
Yeah,
know, hear their voice because their personality and who they are created to be, is mixed in that. And so when you don't allow them to ask you a question, I mean, I couldn't ask questions.
mhm.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, you do what I say, and that's the way it was. It is what it is.
Mhm.
But I'm thankful that um, if they listening, they probably are. But my parenting style was different. One of my prayers was before I even knew God fully, who I was praying to. I prayed that I would be the parent, that I wanted to have. You
Yeah.
see, so I tried to parent in a way that yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone. But anyway, listen, y'all. I know our time has been far spent and we ran over our time tonight, but that's one good thing about me. I'm not on time restriction if we okay. I know sometimes people in different time zones they have to go, and that's okay. They can catch the replay. But listen, I thank you both tonight for coming on and um, sharing this time with me as we just talked a little bit. We just touched the surface
Yes.
on tunneling through abuse and trauma, and now trying to have healthy relationships. We didn't even really touch that part. So, without a doubt, I'm sure I'll have the two of you back on, and we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about that a little bit more. And I'm hoping that we can get some more males on. They can be of any culture, but it will be wonderful to have some more African American men on. Matter of fact, me and Eddie have talked about this before. I said, I'm trying to find 5 to 7 brothers across a spectrum of, I'm going to say 35 to 75. And I want to get in a room with just them,
Mm-hmm.
have some dialogue. See if we. I don't know why we can't really get the brothers talking. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're talking among themselves, if they're just suppressing stuff, or if it's just bottled up. I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know. Because I believe the more open and honest dialogue and conversation that we can have, not only will it help them, it'll help us, and it will help our relationships. Now, I believe that.
I
Okay.
totally agree.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're going to get ready to end, and you all take a minute to just give a closing thought or comment, whatever you want to say. I appreciate both of you coming on tonight, and it's been good. It's been good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Close us out with your remark or comment. Thank you again.
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just so blessed and so honored. It was a pleasure to have this open dialogue. Some things that I've been thinking about, some things that I've been unpacking, some things I've been working through, some things I've been healing, some things, that I had to bring to the light in order for the light to shine on it. And this is a perfect platform for this next level of people who are willing to come to a conclusion that they've got some things that need to be healed. And let's heal them. Let's tell the truth. You can't heal anything you won't face. You can't heal anything you won't speak about, and you certainly can't heal anything you won't tell the truth about. So I'm very blessed. I'm honored. Thank you for introducing me to your platform, and it's been a pleasure hearing you as well as Brother Eddie. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, Eddie?
Um, well, the thing I leave with everybody is that like we all got some trauma, and if we don't want to call it as severe as trauma, then we're compromised in some kind of way. And I think that like investigating ourselves and looking at our experiences in our now and connecting the dots from our then to our now to kind of see how we got here. That's important. And I do appreciate you, Ms. Watson, for allowing me the opportunity to be on the platform. And I appreciate you, Apostle Lynn, for your vulnerability and your openness for your stories. And specifically like the experience with the therapist getting enthralled in your story, because now when somebody's telling a good story, I got to be like, wait, can I be effective with this client? Because, they storytelling, I'm going to get lost, so I appreciate you for that vantage point.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for joining us online. Thank you so much, Overseer Pastor Billy Hall. I know you're not feeling well, but you hung in there. Thank you so much, Latoya Gibson. I see Jafonda Madden Hoggs and some others on. And if I missed you, I'm sorry. But thank you all. Please share. Let me just tell y'all a little bit about my personality before I go. For those of you who don't know, I'm as serious as I can be about healthy relationships and all of these issues that you see here. But one thing I refuse to be is a Grinch or stuck in the mud. I'm always going to incorporate humor. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to smile. I'm going to have fun with whatever I do. I tell people at this point and at my youthful age, if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So, if serious, but I'm going to have doing what I do. I want to end with this, and it's my belief. Until we address and deal with some of the issues that have plagued us and are plaguing us now, we will not have a wholesome, healthy relationship. We just won't. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of it. And 2 or 3 years later, you see, that thing that he or she first came to talk with me about, and they say they okay, it resurfaced, you see, 2 or 3 years later, because they really didn't do the work.
Mm.
It was tough. It was hard. And it's hard, you see, but you've got to face that giant and allow someone to help you walk through that thing, you see. And I'm going to leave it with that. We will never have wholesome, healthy relationships until we really deal with these issues and these struggles. We won't have perfect relationships, but we'll be able to, I'm going to say, manage and live, you know, uh, a fulfilled life. Let me say it like that once we deal with some of these issues. So thank you all again. Appreciate you all so much. So, Lord willing, and if we don't get snowed in too bad next week, we'll see you all here at 9 o'clock on next Thursday night. Thank you again, Apostle Lynn. Thank you, Counselor Eddie. And thank all of you for joining in, and even those of you who will watch the Facebook Live later. Thank you so much. Have a good night, Miss Jennifer. You 78. You hung in there with us, girl. Thank you. We appreciate all of you. Y'all have a good night.
All
Thank
right, now.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.